So I'm just going to do a quick demo on using Matchbox to provision an etc3D cluster. So basically my setup is as depicted in this image, where I have VirtualBox set up with a couple of hosts. One of them is a machine which is running Ubuntu, and on it I have the Matchbox deployment, which is dependent on things like TFTPD, DNS, DHCP, Matchbox itself, and Apache. Networking wise, the Matchbox machine has access to the internet and my network going outbound. And then it has a second interface to an internal network, which is where you will find all the other VirtualBox machines. So I basically have DHCP running on that internal network, and as nodes boot up, they will then obviously get addresses from that machine. So the user story here is that new metal is racked and the MAC address recorded, and that MAC address makes its way into the DHCPD configuration and the Matchbox configuration. When that machine is booted up, it gets its IPXE script as a pointer in the DHCPD response, and it downloads that script from TFTPD. And then TFTPD will chain load another IPXE script from Matchbox, which will then obviously ship with an ignition configuration, and then start downloading OS images and booting the machine into the installer stage. Right, so I'm just going to do a quick demo on using Matchbox to provision an etcd cluster. And one of the examples that comes with Matchbox is this Terraform recipe, which basically I have configured here to have two nodes, etcd1 and 2, and this is the selector for etcd1 and the metadata for etcd1. So the selector will use the MAC address, and the metadata will then be pumped into the config templates for the etcd3 profile, which is associated with this resource. And if we have a quick look at that profile, etcd3d YAML template, and in here we can see the drops for that profile, which is the etcd3 member service and the locking strategy for that. And you'll see the variables that will be substituted in here from the Terraform script. Right, so I'm just going to do a quick demo here of creating an etcd cluster using Matchbox. And Matchbox I have running on an Ubuntu machine, which is basically running TFTPD, DHCP, Apache, and Matchbox. And what I'm going to do now is just boot that machine up, and once it's up, I'm just going to quickly check that it has connectivity to the internet, since we do need to get some NTP stuff for syncing the etcd cluster. So the DHCP configuration, basically I have specified a subnet range there, and that it needs to boot the file name IPXE, which I'll show you in a second. And I've defined two hosts based on their MAC addresses, and these are two VirtualBox machines, and I've put their MAC addresses in here and associated them some IP addresses, domain names, and host names, and they will also boot the IPXE file name, which is in the TFTPD's varlib data folder. Also is some DNS stuff going on. I've created a climax.local domain, and in there I've registered both my etcd1 and 2 nodes. This will be used for the nodes to discover each other using FQDNs. And this is the contents of that IPXE file, which will basically chain load from Matchbox, which basically is almost the same thing, but it's a bit more aware of UUID, MAC addresses, domain names, and so on and so forth for targeting profiles onto machines. This is the Apache server, which will serve both the core OS image of the installer and the boot, the kernel. So I'm going to start a new machine here, and I'm just going to quickly interrupt the boot, and I'm going to tell it to use the CD, which is where I have an IPXE image right now, which is basically part of the firmware of any modern network controller. You can see here the machine is downloading the IPXE script from the TFTP, and then it starts downloading the assets from Matchbox. I will start the second node as well. And I'll do the same thing. So on the left there you can see the DHCP serving addresses, and the installer has started on the etcd1 host. Okay, so there you can see etcd1 is now booted, but it's not actually in its final state now. It's just booted and it's running the CoreOS installer now. So that machine is now applying a ignition profile. There's not really anything showing us here what it's doing right now. But we'll give it a few minutes just to get settled. In the meantime, you can see that the etcd member service is inactive, so this is not a booted machine in like a final runtime sense. It's just booted the bare minimum just to start installing the machine. And if we wait patiently for it to finish partitioning and installing grub. In the meantime, I'll drop into number 2 and have a look that everything is okay there. So that's also still running its CoreOS installer to SDA. Okay, etcd1 is now rebooting and we should see grub. There's grub. Cool, so that's now booting off SDA. I'm going to jump back into that machine quickly and have a look at the status of the etcd member service. Okay, core 1 is up. And let's have a look here. Okay, so it's loaded. It's activating still, so it's still busy doing some stuff. It looks like it wants, it's having some issues connecting to the NTP server to get its time in that. I'll fix that in a moment. I'm just going to quickly add my masquerade forwarder settings on my PXE Linux machine, which is currently serving as a gateway for the other VirtualBox machines. And there we go, now it's basically getting going. Yeah, activating. So by the time I issue this command, it should be up. Okay, cool, it's up. So now I'm going to just do a set message on etcd1, hello world. And that is set. I'm going to just jump into node 2 and have a see if it can read the message. Member service is active, so etcdctl get/message. There we go, hello world.